We begin with this. Governor Jan Brewer says Arizona needs to pay attention because the state is having a serious budget problem.
Yeah, we really are. In fact, she says these are the worst days Arizona has seen in its 97-year history. Javier joins us live from the Capitol with the latest. Javier, good morning.
Good morning. $1.4 billion. That's a deficit the state is facing. And yesterday, Governor Jan Brewer held an emergency cabinet meeting where she discussed the deep hole that the state of Arizona is in. One of her suggestions to help get out of that hole was to release non-violent, undocumented immigrants from our prisons, give them and turn them over to ICE for deportation.
This is an insult to Arizona's taxpayers. First, the federal government refuses to secure our borders and allows criminal aliens to enter our state. Then Arizona taxpayers pay for the prosecution of these criminal aliens. And then the federal government sticks us with the bill for their incarceration. We cannot afford to be their host, and we no longer will be.
Now, it's important to note there's no word on whether ICE could even handle a releasing of so many prisoners and whether they'd be able to deport them. Bringing in now Dean Martin, State Treasurer, to fill us in on some of the details as far as the money. You said at this point in the deficit, it's a pretty dire situation.
It is. The state is looking to max out all of its credit lines in January, and the governor announced yesterday they're going to delay payments to the universities to make sure the state doesn't bounce checks in January.
Yesterday's proposal to release some of these undocumented immigrants who are nonviolent, would that help the deficit, and how much money would that save?
It's going to save millions of dollars that we're paying right now as a state to house illegals. It makes a big dent. It's probably the biggest thing that she's announced so far. It's nowhere near the size of the deficit that we're facing.
This has been an ongoing problem for some 3 years. They couldn't solve the budget problem in the regular session. They've had several emergency sessions. How can we solve the problem, the big deficit, at this point?
Well, don't spend more than you make. Basically, revenues are coming in at 04, 05 levels. If you just said, everybody's going to get what they got in 2005, you'd be done. Now, that's not easy. It's going to take a lot of work, but it's doable. And you finish and solve the budget problem, and schools are still open, prisoners stay behind bars. You can pretty much run the state on what you had in 05.
Now, I've been covering this story for months and months now. Over and over, I've heard the word lack of leadership from both the Republicans and Democrats. Is that what's gotten us into this problem?
Well, it is. If you remember, a year ago, the former governor stormed out of a meeting when I was describing exactly the situation we're in right now without changes. You've basically had nobody wanting to deal with the problem, wanting to paper it over. This is not a Republican problem. This is not a Democrat problem. This is a math problem. You have more money going out the door than coming in. This November was the most expensive November in state history. October was the second most expensive October in state history. You can't spend so much more than you make without going into bankruptcy.
One last question. A lot has been put on the sale of these properties that the state owns. How close are they to being able to sell the state capitol and other state buildings?
According to the governor's office, they're on track to have those buildings sold and the money in by the end of January, which is the state's basically desperate. If those buildings don't sell, which they look like they are, but if they don't, there's no way to pay bills in February. Literally, checks bounce, payroll doesn't happen. They're out of money, so they're really dependent upon selling this Capitol building behind us.
To be fair, there are rumors that you might make a run for governor coming up. Anything you can add to that?
We are seriously looking at it. We'll have an answer after the new year.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the latest here from the state capitol. But again, a lot more has to be done in order to balance this budget that seems to be out of control at this point.
Yeah, it is truly a mess. Javier, thanks very much.